All right, guys, welcome to another episode here of Vital Tradition Podcast. We got a special episode here. We're kind of following up with the beginner's boat guide, purchasing guide on last episode with Andy Fair Marine. And what better way to follow that up with insurance? Everybody needs it. So we're going to talk boat insurance, but recreational insurance generally today. Especially for people that never done it, it should be a really helpful episode. Give you a nice little window into the insurance world. And with that, I'd like to introduce my guest today. We have Mr. Derek Parker from American Family Insurance. Derek, how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on, Dustin. Really appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Well, why don't you start off telling everybody out there a little bit about yourself and about American Family?
Yeah, so my name is Derek Parker. I'm a sales district leader for the company, which means I have a district of agents that are customer facing and helping customers make the right insurance needs. American Family has been in business for over 90 years, working on really protecting dreams and helping people go out and really enjoy their lives, but pursue the things that are most important to them and rely on us to protect those important things.
That's awesome. It's insurance is one of those things that you kind of like maybe forget about, but you really need it, and it's really awesome, and you hope you don't have to use it.
Yeah. Typically, it's one of those things that people hope they never have to talk about once they purchase it, but it's always good when you need it in those unfortunate situations.
Yeah, totally. How long have you been with American Family?
So I've been with the company for 11 years. I had an agency on the north side of Milwaukee for about 5 years, and then transitioned to Madison to take on a corporate role, training brand new agents for about a year. After that, I got promoted into a sales leadership position. And then about 2 years ago, I took over actually Southwest Wisconsin. And about 2 months ago, I've been asked to take over Southeast Wisconsin. And so it's been a great journey, but very fortunate. My entire family on my parents, or on my dad's side, I should say, has been in the business since I've been born. And so American Family is really all I know. I know the culture, I know the people, and I know the opportunity that it can provide for others looking to maybe get into a career that they didn't think they'd want to. But insurance is a very fulfilling career for anyone that's willing to pursue it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool that you have such a deep connection with the family ties there, and going back to your dad being in the business before you were born. That's really cool. What kind of fun stuff did you do in the outdoors when you were a kid?
Oh man, I've been fishing ever since I can remember. I do have a funny story that's kind of self-deprecating, but every year we would go up north, and my parents would be yelling as we'd be pulling into the cabin that we rented, and said, "Hey, Derek, I need you to help us unload and unpack everything before you can go down and start fishing." So, of course, I said yes. And what would I do? I grabbed my fishing pole and end up on the dock and never help out. In fact, I was so excited one year I actually ran through the screen door and took that off of the house. And so, fishing has been something I've enjoyed doing. Haven't really gotten into it as extensively as I'd like to, but it's just a great pastime activity. And then I started hunting at age 12, deer hunting with my father and some of his old friends that he used to hunt with. And then I really got into duck and goose hunting throughout college high school and then college. And then once you graduate college, you enter the real world and got to make a living for yourself. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to get outdoors, but this year, thanks to you and thanks to another friend of ours, got convinced to try out bow hunting and found a new passion to go sitting in the woods in the fall and chase that ever elusive, nice white-tailed deer.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's so cool. It's just great to be outside, and it's really cool to see you kind of getting into it. What kind of stuff when you were running out through screen doors were you trying to get to so fast?
Oh man,
It's like man eater
bluegills.
bluegills, or the world's biggest bass, or what's going on down there on the dock?
Yeah, those monster 3-inch bluegills. I laugh because there's so many great memories of going up north as a kid, and my parents would rent a John boat, just a 9.9 horse motor on it. So then I had to go through boater safety so I could take it out by myself. But before that, all we had was a rowboat. and we'd take that rowboat out to one of those swimming platforms. And to this day, no one believes me, but I was just throwing a spinner off of that and never really knew what I was doing. But as I pulled it up, I actually had a muskie jump out of the water at it, and I can still picture it going around its mouth. But that's kind of what gets you hooked, is you catch some fish that you've never caught before, but honestly, it's just sitting out and relaxing and enjoying the outdoors. It's such a beautiful, beautiful area.
Yeah, man, that's so cool. I mean, stories like that is exactly how you get hooked as a kid. I have a very similar one with my brother. We went on a summer trip in middle school to Maine. Took the RV, towed a car, but we didn't take our boat, my dad's boat at the time. But we stayed at a friend's cabin on a private lake up there in Maine, and they had access to a canoe and like some sort of like paddle boat, essentially, like one of those plastic, you sit in them. But it had taken on some water, it wasn't brand new. And so Alex and I hopped in it, and we're paddling around, and basically we took turns just throwing our lines over our shoulders and paddling forward and doing some paddle trolling with like just a straight up worm and a hook. And we had no idea at the time what we were catching because the water was gin clear. We could see fish. We're like, man, I know there's fish down there. And we just caught some giant bass. It was really cool. Just dark, dark. We had never seen bass that dark before. And I'm like, this is so cool to be able to see down like 10 feet, no problem, and look at the bottom. It was just, but like you said, like it just solidified even more kind of what we already loved. So yeah, cool stories, man.
Oh, that's awesome. That's what gets kids hooked. And I know this past weekend we were out ice fishing, and I can share this with you. We didn't catch a lot of fish that day, but you and I pulled up a couple perch at the same time, and we had my 3-year-old son with us. And the next day he went to school and was telling everybody how we went fishing and caught a fish. So super excited to kind of pass that tradition along to my son.
That's so great, man. I'm so glad he had a good time. Yeah, that's been the MO of Madison. Unfortunately for me, I'm sure other people have maybe found some more fish, but the general consensus is you get about fish or two an hour, and it's not like they were small, but yeah, the school comes through about once every hour, and you got to hope you're ready for them. Which
Exactly.
is not exactly the recipe for success, bringing a little tyke out and trying to get him some action. So I'm glad he stuck it out and was able to actually get a fish topside. That's cool.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how the current times have influenced the insurance market. Have you been busy with recreational insurance, I guess, specifically, boat, RV, stuff like that, in the current times with, pandemic, and then, on this side of the 2020?
Yeah. So in talking with our small business owners, our agents, we've been very fortunate, in all honesty. The pandemic really impacted a lot of people, and unfortunately, a lot of people lost their businesses. However, with us, we were okay, and the reason for that is people always need insurance, whether it's required by law, whether it's required by your mortgage companies. People just need to have it, and kudos to American Family. We're currently giving out our 4th round of premium relief on the auto side because driving behaviors really kind of shut down for a while there. And now they're starting to pick back up, but we've been able to give some of the premium dollars back to our customers to help them out in the financial situations that unfortunately aren't the best during a pandemic. One thing that really has picked up though is the recreational vehicles. Those that were fortunate enough to maintain employment and not be able to go on the trips, go visit families, go on the experiences that they're used to, they brought the experiences to them. And whether that was purchasing a boat, purchasing an ATV, those were kind of some of the big things. Campers were big as well. They really just wanted to provide a different type of experience throughout 2020 that they knew they weren't going to do by going on vacation. And so a lot of people, like I talked about, just did staycations and purchased a lot of recreational vehicles and recreational equipment and upgraded their homes as well. So it was a fun year. It was a challenging year, but just happy to see our agents made it through, knowing that the pandemic is hopefully going to be coming to somewhat of an end over the next 6-12 months or so with the vaccine.
Yeah, we hope so. You mentioned quite a few fun toys there. Do you mind just walking us through kind of, I guess those are three great examples, but if you had anything else that comes to mind, maybe start with, you got your first time boat buyer. Let's do that one first. So somebody, let's say yesterday, bought a boat and they just realized, hey, I need insurance. How does that process work? And just maybe start from the beginning and walk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. What I would encourage anyone listening to do is to get in touch with an agent, whether you have one or not. Get in touch with an agent. A lot of people will go out there and purchase boat insurance, and basically all it will have is the basic equipment and liability. But as you add on trolling motors, as you add on fish finders, hydraulic anchors, even your trailer, you might have a gap in coverage that you weren't aware of. And so I would just get in contact with that agent, figure out, one, is the boat insured properly? Two, are you aware of what it's actually covering? And three, if there are any gaps, make sure you add that on. And I know cost is always a concern. I can tell you right now, boat insurance is not that expensive. It's going to be usually a 12-month policy. I know here in Wisconsin, people are like, wait, why do I have to take out a 12-month policy on a boat that I'm only going to use 4 or 5 months? Right. Well, you're probably going to store it. And when you store it, unfortunately, sometimes mice get in there, other critters get in there, something might fall on it. You want to make sure that your boat is thoroughly protected for all types of risk on or off the water.
Sure. Now that makes perfect sense. Now, is this something that if they want to reach out to an agent, do you just Google American Family in your city? How do you go about finding an agent in your area?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely go on Google is a great way to do it. I mean, we have 301 agents Wisconsin wide, and we operate in 19 states. And so more than likely, if in one of the states that you're listening to, American Family's there. And we have just tremendous agents. I can tell you our customer satisfaction rates skyrocketed during the pandemic. Our retention rates skyrocketed through the pandemic. And that's just credit to them and their teams that they have helping guide the customer through their insurance life cycle. And so I would definitely Google one, interview one or two. I always believe that it's got to be a good fit, and people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And so start to build that relationship and make sure that you're getting, or your agent's looking out for the best interests of you and your family.
Absolutely. And I can personally attest to that. This year, I will kind of piggyback on what you're saying. And, when you're shopping for, in this example, boat insurance, you really do want to find an agent. And I've just, like I said, had personally a great experience with American Family. My agent here, Josh Erickson, he was able to text me on his own accord on behalf of his, agency. I didn't reach out to him, but informing me of benefit changes and return money on a premium. And that's great. I'd never had anything like that before from, a customer experience, especially with insurance. So I was really blown away by that. And it really did keep me around. I was like, man, that's really cool and impressive as a customer to experience that. So I definitely really appreciated it. And I would also encourage everybody out there, shop a couple agents, but consider the agent route versus just, shopping a policy. I maybe you'll touch on this, Derek, but I think you guys can do some bundling too. So assuming, you're buying a recreational vehicle in a boat, you probably already have at least one, if not more than one, insurance policy on something that's not recreational. And most likely you're going to be able to bundle that if you're already using American Family. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the majority of insurance companies offer bundled policies, and depending on what research you do online, it says shop your insurance every couple of years. You'll get better discounts. And frankly, I don't view insurance as necessarily something that just has a price tag associated with it. And so are you getting the best value? It might not be the cheapest policy out there for you, but is it the best value? Is your agent truly looking out for you? Are they looking to make sure you're utilizing all the discounts, making sure that you sit down and do a review with them every year or two to make sure that, hey, yeah, I added a basement and I forgot to call you about it. And you now had a loss and there's a gap in coverage because that conversation never happened. And so it's really critical to talk to an agent, have that trusting relationship, but also bundle your policies. There's so many discounts available for that. A lot of companies talk about the home auto bundle, but there's home auto, life bundles, recreational vehicles. I mean, there's a lot of discounts to be had out there. And so definitely talk to your agent and make sure you're getting the best value for what you're paying for your insurance.
Okay. Yeah, that's great advice. Can you touch just while we're still on the boat, can you go through just a really blanket overview of the options for boat insurance? Kind of, I guess, specifically, um, what would be kind of standard for a beginner boater or first time boat buyer saying, they bought their first fishing boat or they bought their first pontoon, wakeboard boat, etc. And then, maybe some other policies you offer that maybe aren't common or maybe won't be applicable to the beginner, but are available if it's something you're into?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of boat policies, what they're going to do is it's like a car policy. And so what I mean by that, and I'm going to talk a little insurance lingo, but I'll bring it back home. It's going to be insured for what's called actual cash value or ACV. And so what that means is as your boat continues to age, that means depreciation is kicking in on the value of that boat, similar to like a car. Once you drive it off the lot, we know it's not worth as much as when it was sitting on the lot.
Right.
And so there's options through some contracts to add on replacement costs for your boat, meaning even if it's a 5-year-old boat and for God knows what reason it gets totaled out, you're paying for an endorsement there that will say, hey, I'm gonna find you your boat, and if not, I'm gonna find you one that's similar to your current boat and replace that for you. You're gonna have a deductible associated with it. Obviously, you can choose what that deductible is, and I would almost encourage you to go with a smaller deductible. When we're talking about the cost of boat insurance, as I said earlier, it's relatively inexpensive, and deductible changes don't really do a whole lot to the premium. But you're going to get that from a base policy standpoint. You're going to get actual cash value on the boat itself and the motor. Specifically if it's an outboard, if it's an inboard, outboard, or an inboard, that's obviously associated with the boat itself. And then you're going to get kind of a basic trailer package. Some policies will have limits in there, but a lot of misconceptions are, hey, I bought the boat from a dealership. It's my first boat. It's just basic. All it's got is a depth finder or a fish finder and a trolling motor. Well, you got to make sure you have that special equipment added onto that policy, because we've seen too many videos out there. Some guy steps on his trolling motor to make it go forward, and oops, he forgot to bolt it down, and it falls off and goes into the water and it's completely gone. And so make sure that you divulge everything that you added on, even if you think it's very minor, to that boat policy, so that way you're adequately insured.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, that's really good insight. And not something you'd probably think of right off the bat. You're probably thinking of, if you do think insurance route, or they tell you at the dealership, hey, you got to line up some insurance, you're probably just like, let's just get the insurance done. And you're just thinking about where you're going to fish or where you're going to tube and ski. So yeah, that's a really good point. What about, let's say, you're a fishing guide or you run charters or something. Do you guys offer policies that are kind of not your cut and dry standard policy for the beginner boat owner?
So let me re-ask your question here. Are you looking more for someone that just purchased their first boat and is saying, hey, I'm going to start a guide service
Yeah,
with that boat.
exactly. Yep. So, or somebody who lives on, let's say anywhere on Lake Michigan, like on a Great Lake. So they want to do salmon charters or charter up in Green Bay or something, like where they're going to run Great Lakes waters versus inland lakes waters, where, is that insurance policy going to be different, or can they, or what, have you talked about the same policy they would apply for essentially?
Yeah, so if it depends on a couple of different things too. It's going to be the use of how often you're going to use it from a business standpoint compared to a personal. And two, how's it going to be titled? Is it going to be titled in a business name? It's going to be titled in your personal. If you are considering starting a guide service or chartering different fishing tours, definitely talk to your agent, because now we might be looking at more of a business type policy that can offer some of those professional liability in case someone were to slip and fall and get hurt on your boat, or someone unfortunately passes away due to something happened on your boat. And so talk to your insurance agent. There are different policies out there depending on what you're using your boat for, and especially if it's being used for a business.
Okay, got it. So it's kind of like a discussion to have, and you really kind of tease out what your purpose and how you're going to use it.
Yep,
Okay,
exactly.
okay,
Exactly.
got it. Anything else you want to add for the beginner boat insurer, if you will? So somebody looking for the first policy, something we haven't covered. Is there any, common obstacles people run into, or common questions you get about, first time callers or inquiries about boat insurance?
No, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's not a ton of different options and coverages that will be available for you. But I think I touched on this a little bit earlier. Just check on the trailer as well, because trailers, depending on if it's just a basic trailer, can be $1,000 or it can be $5,000. And so just make sure you're insuring that as well. The nice part is when you're towing it, a lot of times the liability will come from your vehicle policy. But any damage to the trailer, to the boat, you want to make sure you have the right coverage in place.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, if you've got that cost difference in the trailer, and make sure that's on there. So what about, I just thought of a quick question while you were talking about that. If you go into the dealership and you're picking out your boat, and can you do the insurance like before you get your boat? Like if you have the information, can you start a conversation with an agent before you get it? So let's say, right now we're in this period of time where the used market's crazy because of COVID, and the new market is way backed up because of parts and logistical issues, with COVID related issues overseas and here. So you've got people ordering boats that may not see their boat for 6 to 12 months. Could they go ahead and get a policy started if they've got the information and a down payment on a boat being built, or is that something you do once you have the boat in your possession?
So it's once you have the boat in the possession. However, I would encourage you to get in touch with your agent first and foremost. And if you can give them a few days advance notice saying, hey, it's Wednesday, I'm going to pick up a boat from Skipper Buds on Saturday. I have the serial numbers, I have the valuation on it. They can usually go ahead and get that policy started for you. If it's being built, a lot of that's going to fall back on the manufacturer. It's their job to build that boat and to deliver it to you in pristine condition. Once you own it outright, then that's when you want to get that insurance going. But definitely talk to your agent ahead of time. And two, I mean, you're going to understand what that cost of insurance is going to be as well. They'll be able to provide you that quote and kind of get the ball rolling for you a little earlier rather than later.
Sure. Okay. And then do you typically see, let's just talk that basic insurance policy on, your first time boat purchase. Are people, you're just paying your annual fee or your premium, and then are there anything else they have to do once that's established? So you've got everything, everything's signed, everything's turned into you, you're good to go, and you're using the boat your first year, you store it. Is there anything they have to do year to year, or is it just like it's there if you need it, and after the paperwork's signed, that's it?
The only thing you got to do, keep paying that bill.
Okay.
And so I know a lot of companies, they'll allow you to pay it on a monthly basis as well. Some insurance companies do have discounts if you paid in full up front. So it's completely up to you, but as long as you keep paying that bill, that policy is going to remain in force and be there for you. And like I said, it goes back to review your policies at least every 2 years with your agent to make sure there aren't any gaps or any changes that maybe just slipped your mind as the years went on.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay. Let's maybe move on to either ATVs or RVs, and I'll let you kind of pick which one. And I'm guessing you could probably lump snowmobiles in there somewhere too. But just maybe like land-based recreational vehicles, and maybe just start from the beginner side of that and touch on a couple of differences with the boat insurance.
Yeah, so ATVs and snowmobiles and even UTVs, I can kind of pump into one.
Sure.
Those are going to act a little bit more like your traditional auto policy.
Okay.
And the reason for it is you're driving them. And so if you're driving them and you hit somebody or you injure yourself, it's very similar to a car. It's just, hey, for a snowmobile, we're going to cruise on the trails up in Minocqua for the weekend. But it's very, very similar to what a car policy was. So you'll have your liability insurance, your medical expense. So the liability insurance covers anyone that you were to injure. And then your medical expenses for injuries you sustain yourself. You'll have your comprehensive deductible, which is, if you Google it, you'll probably see this phrase a lot, acts of God. But basically, those are for things fall on it. You hit an animal, not your typical accident. But then you'll have your collision deductible as well. And that's if you run into a tree, if you hit another snowmobile or another ATV. And then you have uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. So if you run into somebody or someone hits you, I should say, if someone were to hit you on the trails and they aren't carrying insurance and you sustain an injury or your passenger sustains an injury, you can get coverage through your recreational vehicle policy. Very similar to how a car policy is built.
Okay.
Our RVs, same thing. Those are just like a car, but the only difference is a camper. And a lot of people have been buying the tow behind campers throughout 2020. And the only difference there is the liability itself extends from your vehicle, because more times than not, it's either sitting parked or it's getting pulled behind your vehicle. And so liability extends there. And then you'll have just a comprehensive and a collision deductible. So if anything were to happen with that camper, you would have coverage there as well.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, like a towing camper, so an unmotorized camping vehicle, essentially, would be covered partly under your auto policy, your auto insurance policy that you already have. You wouldn't have to. Is that inherent? Like you wouldn't have to add anything, or is that like you would call up your agent and say, "Hey, I'm getting this." And then it would be like, okay, well, we're going to add this to your current auto policy. And then you'd have this other supplemental thing, or is it, we're just going to do the supplemental, but that other part's already in your auto policy?
So the liability portion of towing any type of, well, I shouldn't say any type, but when towing a camper, it automatically extends from your auto. You actually would not even have to call your insurance agent to add that onto your policy. And that could vary by insurance companies, but I know with American Family that extends. Now, any damage that happens to the camper, that's where you would need to take out an actual camper policy.
I see.
Yeah, and that's just for, if something were to fall on it, if it gets hailed on, or if, God forbid, when you're backing it up, you didn't see that big oak tree and you back right into it and take out the back half of it.
Right.
Then you would have your collision coverage for that.
Oh man. Yeah. Too many fun memories of my dad backing up our RV. Holy smokes. Like, I was impressed, man. Like I'm always impressed watching, semi truck drivers backing around, those big C class, A class. It doesn't really matter. It's all impressive, just using your mirrors and you've got, 20 feet behind you, sometimes more. It's impressive.
Yeah, it makes you, it humbles you very quickly when you can back a boat in the water. Yeah. So when you got a 28-foot camper that you're pushing behind your car and backing it up into a a campsite that's just as wide as the camper, it's a very humbling experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure the same thing for using a U-Haul. Like if you rent a truck or something and you're going across the country, it's just got to be so weird for people doing it for the first time. Oh man. But so I guess another big, like not bigger question, but are there other products? I'm a little bit of a beginner to some of this stuff myself. I have basic policies, but um, are any of these things, we kind of touched a little bit about bundling. So could you maybe go over, and I suppose you can probably just speak to American Family, but just in general, how does it work if you wanted to get as much together as possible? Somebody coming in, maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding your question, what's kind of the first steps in bundling your insurance together and how that all works?
Yeah, exactly.
And I know I probably sound like a broken record, but definitely get in contact with an agent. Make sure that you have your current policies, ready to go to share with them. And it's not like I talked about earlier, we're not always looking for the best price, but the best value. And what that insurance agent might find is you're either overinsured in one area or you're underinsured in another. They can start kind of providing some of that value to you up front.
Yeah.
So you're not surprised if something were to happen, whether there's coverage or whether there's not. And just listen to their advice. I mean, there's a reason that insurance agents have to get licensed and have to go through continuing education every 2 years. It's so that they're experts and they have your best interest in mind when it comes to ensuring what's most important to you. Typically speaking, people switch over and they'll do their home and auto insurance up front. If they have any toys, any boats, campers, ATVs, UTVs, snowmobiles, those usually come as well. But as you start accumulating different things, so if you're a homeowner, and let's just say you live in a $250,000 house, I mean, that's an asset that unfortunately, if you're not insured properly, somebody can sue you for and slap a lien on until you pay off that judgment. And so I would encourage everybody to look into a liability umbrella, just because as you go on in life and you're putting away your retirement funds, your 401ks, any other investments that you may have out there, any liquid or any cash equivalents can be turned into actual assets that people can go after if you're not insured properly. And umbrella insurance is a great way to do that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that, especially when you touched on, accidents in the boat. So somebody buying a boat for the first time and, God forbid you have somebody get hurt while you're out recreating on the water. I've heard some talk of umbrella policies. Is that something that you would need in addition to a boat policy? Or, how do those things work? In tandem, separate?
Yeah, so it's an extension of your liability. And so I'll give you a kind of a quick example of something I experienced very early on in my careers. I had a customer call me the morning after an accident had happened. And their daughter, 19 years old, was on a country road, came to a stop sign. It was a T intersection by a highway. And it was right at that perfect time at night where the sunset's gorgeous, but the sun is right in your eyes. And so she looked to her right, she looked to her left, didn't see anybody, pulled out. Well, didn't see the motorcyclist coming, pulled out right in front of him. He went over her hood, and unfortunately, he passed away because of his injuries. And thankfully, their car insurance had a $250,000 limit on that specific policy. Well, thank goodness they had an umbrella, because the motorist that unfortunately passed away, his family did end up suing the customer, and our lawyers and claims adjusters really had their back. We paid out our policy limits on that case, but if that additional $1 million of liability hadn't have been there, that can hurt a family financially, not just immediately, but it can be generationally as well. And so, for the minimal cost of extending liability to additional limits, especially as you start accumulating wealth and you start purchasing other assets and other toys and other fun things you want to make sure that you're properly covered.
Okay. And is that, if I'm understanding you correctly, that umbrella policy is more attached to you as a person, not necessarily your individual toys. So if you buy a boat, it's not like you need an umbrella policy for that boat. Your umbrella is your umbrella, and then you're carrying that same policy with you wherever you're recreating, or whichever toy you're recreating on at the time. Is that correct?
Yeah, so think of it exactly like an umbrella.
Okay.
So you have on the ground, you have your boat, you have your car, you have your house, and it starts hailing out, and you just put up one big umbrella, and none of your stuff is going to get protect or damage from that hail. Now, I don't mean that from a physical damage standpoint. It's from a liability standpoint, but it really protects everything around you from a liability standpoint that you have insured. And it doesn't just follow necessarily the policies that you have, but it can also follow you personally as well.
Sure. So another question to piggyback kind of all the stuff, and maybe it's a little backtracking, but in the event that somebody, is there an instance where somebody could not get insured? We've kind of talked about all green lights moving forward. All it takes is somebody wanting to get the insurance. Are there any scenarios that you've run into where somebody may have different circumstances or more hurdles to jump through, or would possibly not be able to get insured for boat insurance or recreational vehicle insurance?
Yeah, it really comes down to the driving behavior and driving history that they have. Unfortunately, people fall upon hard times from here to there. Might be a little bit tougher to get insurance, but usually speaking, there's somebody that will be able to write you with a company out there. And so there's going to be options, but driving record usually is the big player in insurability when it comes to recreational vehicles.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so really, it's not a hard no. You just have to maybe do a little bit more digging, and you might pay a little bit more in your premium.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, anything that you can think of that I haven't asked or tried to ask as a beginner in the recreational vehicle realm? I know we touched about the umbrella, which is great. Anything that comes to mind that you would want to point out?
No, I think we've covered a lot of great topics when it comes to, what you asked me to be on for is the recreational side of things. And what I'll encourage people, it's not that scary. It really isn't. It's a pretty seamless process. And if you work with a good trusted agent, they'll make that process easy for you. And they'll be there right beside you and partnering alongside of you to make sure you have the right coverage. And so don't be afraid to purchase something or to do something in your life because you're afraid of the insurance side of things. That's why we're here. We want to be your professionals and really want to be your trusted advisor to make sure you're protected the way that you should be protected.
Yeah, that's great. And like I said, my personal experience has been excellent. Real quick, do you have anything that would be different for recreating outdoors that's not vehicle related? So as far as insurance, maybe it's just the umbrella, but let's say you enjoy hiking or mountain biking or foraging for morels or turkey hunting, deer hunting, elk hunting, whatever. Are there other insurance policies people could maybe be on the lookout for if they've got those kind of activities on their mind?
Yeah, so one of the main questions that usually comes up is, hey, I just bought 40 acres in central Wisconsin. What do I need to do? And as long as there's not a physical building, and by physical building, I don't mean, the Taj Mahal deer stands that are out there. I mean, like a hunting shack or a cabin.
Yeah.
As long as there's something like that not on the property, then you can extend the liability from your homeowner's policy. And so definitely talk with your agent about that. There could be an endorsement that needs to be added to your policy to ensure that happens. But you know, as far as the other type of stuff with biking and hiking and snowshoeing and hunting for morels or bow hunting, I mean, there's not a whole lot to think about from an insurance standpoint. It's just go out, be smart. And, we always talk about this with hunter safety. I mean, always make sure you know what's not just at your target, but what's beyond your target as well. And just make sure you're a smart, avid, or a smart, conscious hunter when you're out there. But other than that, I mean, just follow the laws and you should be okay.
Okay. So it sounds like there's no additional, it'd be like umbrella or the insurance you already have, basically, is what you're dealing with in those arenas.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Perfect. Real quick, I think the last little section I want to touch on here is, let's say you're a first time boat owner and you've got your policy, but now you've had your first accident or whatever, like first reason to maybe have to think about insurance again after you bought it. you know, Again, can you walk us through a little bit the basics on that? Like, I'm assuming you would call your agent, but like, what's the timing? Like, did you call right away? How does that all play out?
Yeah. So unfortunately, accidents and stuff happens, which is why you have insurance. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but yeah, call your agent. And let's say it happens, on a Saturday night at 11 o'clock at night, you're out walleye fishing, and you didn't see that rock or that log or that sandbar, and you tore up your prop, and now you have to think about, oh man, I gotta file a claim. The good news is the majority of insurance companies out there have 24-hour service. And I know with American Family, you can call your agent's office. It'll prompt you with some messages at the end that say, hey, if you need to file a claim, press 1 or 2 or whatever that number is, and it'll connect you to our 24-hour care center, and you're able to file a claim at that point with those individuals, and they'll help start walking you through what that process looks like. Normally, depending on severity of the loss, you might talk to an adjuster over the phone, and they can all be handled, and the check will go out in the mail. Other times it might be more complex, where an adjuster has to come out and do some investigations and just check it out and make sure that we're doing what's right for both you, but also for the company as well. And so claims process, we pride ourselves on how we handle our claims. I've always been extremely proud of how American Family handles their claims. And so it's a pretty seamless process. But, even after a file claim, talk to your agent and just make sure that you understand what that process looks like, and kind of lay out the expectations for you and what you expect of them as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I feel like that's probably a really overlooked question. You get past all the, whether it's intimidating for you or not, but you go through the process of setting up your insurance policy, and then you probably wash your hands at that point. You're like, well, hopefully I don't ever have to think about that again. And then when you do, it may be like years later, and you're like, oh yeah, I know I have insurance, but I don't even know where the number is. Like, where's it? You kind of like dig through your email and trying to find stuff. So I'm sure you probably run into a few people like that.
Oh yeah. Yep. Definitely put it in your cell phone. I mean, nowadays we all have hundreds and maybe even thousands of contacts in our phones, but make sure your insurance agency is in there, because, if something does happen, at least you got a number to call, because you'll be going through enough at that time. I mean, it's kind of a panic. It's a crisis situation. And so if there's any way we can make it easier, we'll do our absolute best to rectify that situation.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Well, like I said, man, I'm so happy with what I got going on, and it's been an excellent customer service experience. But I think, just speaking outside of American Family and insurance as a whole, don't be intimidated. Obviously, some things are mandatory, but it's not intimidating. So go out, do a little homework, call an agent, and just have a conversation about getting you set up. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Like you said, with the pricing, I know I had a conversation with Andy Farrell on the last podcast, and I'm pretty sure, speaking in very, very general prices, I think an average first-time boat owner is probably going to spend somewhere between $300 and $800 on their annual premium for all the coverage you're probably going to need. Now, don't quote me on that, but I feel like that's a pretty good ballpark, right?
I think you might even have inflated it a little bit.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'll be the bearer of good news. It might be cheaper than that.
So, no, and I'll just say it definitely varies based on the type of boat that you get. And
Right.
So again, give your agent a couple day heads up so that way you know exactly what you're getting into. But again, it's a relatively inexpensive hobby to get into, except
Right.
for I think boat stands for what? Break out another 1,000.
Something like that. Yeah. Blow another 1,000. Right. Right. You're already throwing thousands of dollars into the water. You might as well just chuck a couple extra $100 and protect yourself and your family.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Well, Derek, I really appreciate taking time to talk a little bit of insurance with me. And I hope everybody learned something, because it's not an intuitive subject for a lot of people. And I hope it's not intimidating, but I have a feeling it is for some as well. So I hope this helps, get people on the phone, calling an agent, and doing the right thing going forward. So, Derek, where can people find more information about you and American Family if they want to get a hold of somebody?
Yeah, so to find me, I would say the best source would be LinkedIn. Just Google Derek Parker, or not Google, search for Derek Parker on LinkedIn. Otherwise, you can go to amfam.com, and there is an agent locator tool on there. So you can type in your address and it'll give you options for a few different agents in your area. Very, very simple. And I would encourage you, play around on amfam.com. There's a lot of great high level resources out there that can help get kind of that process started. And then pick the agent. And like I said, find the one that's going to work for you. That like, and trust, and we'll take care of you.
Perfect. All right, man. Thanks so much. Guys, thanks for tuning in. It's been another episode here of the Vital Tradition Podcast. Subscribe, check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for listening.